Hi, my name is Dima Kurdi. I'm the author of The Boy on the Beach, and you are in the stream.
Hi, I'm Remi Ochlik.
And I'm Malika Bilal. Today, what is the legacy of journalist Marie Colvin?
We're discussing the role of journalism in conflict as a documentary on the legendary war correspondent is released. So you can share your thoughts, and then you might also be in the stream. On February the 13th, 2012, reporter Marie Colvin and photographer Paul Conroy snuck into Syria. They were on a mission to tell the stories of Syrian civilians trapped in the war-torn city of Homs.
For Colvin, it would be her last assignment. On February 22nd, she and another journalist, French photographer Remi Ochlik, were killed by the Syrian army. Conroy and others were wounded but survived. That story is told in an upcoming documentary, Under the Wire, based on Conroy's book of the same title. Have a look.
It wasn't war.
What was it?
Slaughter. She was clearly impassioned by what she'd seen.
I counted 14 shells hitting this civilian area.
I said, Marie, what is your exit strategy?
Why is she gonna run when they can't run?
I want to tell the stories of each person. These are not numbers.
And then I just had this. And he looked at me and he said, "Do not get in the ambulances." We knew we had to drive through the front line. Get ready, we're going. Get out and tell the world. That was their words. Tell the world.
Joining us from London, we have the film's director, Chris Martin, and Paul Conroy, the photographer who was with Marie in Syria. And in Oyster Bay, New York, Cat Colvin, Marie's sister. Hello, everybody. It is good to have you here. This is an unusual film. It's an intriguing film. It feels like a movie, Chris. Where were you when you thought, I need to make this documentary?
Trinidad. I was actually filming, we were having a shoot in the very, very pleasant island of Trinidad, and I heard about Marie. Marie and Remi had been killed. And I started obviously paying a lot of attention, and then I saw these clips on YouTube of Paul making a plea, and he was trapped, and it just gripped me then. And when we would go out on the shoot in the days, all the crew would be saying, "Is he out? Is he out? Is he out?" And I think everybody, who sort of encountered the story has just been kind of enthralled by it, and I know I have from that very first moment, really.
Paul, you
Nice to think of you in Trinidad while we were in Homs.
Yeah.
Paul, you have
in Trinidad.
You have a unique role in this film because I was sitting there in the theatre and there's this horror that is happening and we're reliving it with you and all the other people who were involved and there with you in Homs. But we're also laughing because you're witty, your humour is so dry as well. How do you do that? Because you must be retelling your story so many times.
Yeah, I mean, humour actually, it's not just in those. I mean, a lot of people when they read the book said it's the funniest black tragedy that they've ever read. But that all stems from doing the job. You know, Marie had an incredible sense of humour, and so that's how we kind of bounced off each other, getting through doing the job. And you know, I think it's important that it carried on like that through the book. And in the film, and it's reassuring in the cinema when you're watching it and you do hear the audience laughing at the beginning. There's a few parts where you can hear the chuckles, and when I hear that, I kind of think that they're engaging and they're going on the trip with us. But yeah, humour. Ask Cat about Marie and their humour. It was.
Yeah, absolutely, Paul. It's what reminds me so much of Marie when I talk to Paul. I've never met anyone but Paul and Marie who had this really dark sense of humor. Marie had us all laughing when she, lost her eye. it was just a funny story. It's hard to imagine, but the way she told it had everyone laughing. I honestly thought she'd come out of Homs with a funny story, that the news reports were all wrong and she was fine. But obviously she didn't.
You know, Kat, the run-up and then the press on this documentary have people sharing their own reflections online about your sister. I wanted to share just two from members of our community. This is Sumaya, who tweets in, Marie Colvin was a huge reason I went into journalism. When she passed away, I sent my father a brief bio and said, this is my dream job. And he wasn't very excited, to say the least. And Sumaya is now a journalist, oftentimes with Al Jazeera. Another person writes in on Twitter saying that as a Tamil, I'm grateful for her, as she had the accurate and unbiased understanding towards the prolonged civil war in the island country Sri Lanka, where she lost her left eye by Sri Lankan Army RPG in April 2001. Kat, she became really known and recognizable for that eye patch. Tell us about that time in Sri Lanka.
Well, I'll tell you that tweet you just read from the Tamil person, that community has been so incredibly supportive of my family and done so much to preserve Marie's legacy. So I really appreciate that from them. And I know that Marie cared so much to make their voices heard. And the journalism student who wrote in, I'm sure her parents might not be thrilled. It can be dangerous, but it makes me really happy. You know, we've started a journalism school in Marie's name. She was so supportive of young journalists because she believed in how important this job was, especially today. I am thrilled to hear that students are interested in following Marie's path.
Paul, there's a big picture behind me, and it's of you and Marie working together, and you look as thick as thieves. What was it, do you think, that made your working relationship work so well? Obviously the same black sense of humour, but there's got to be a lot more than that to carry you through war zones.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think it boiled back to how we first met in Syria. I think it was 13, 14 years ago. I just tried to build a boat and sneak into Iraq on this homemade boat. And no one else had talked to me when I got captured. All the other journalists said, you've spoilt it for everyone. But Marie walked in, and I remember I was sitting in the bar on my own, and she just walked in, she went, who and where is the boatman? And I kind of rather meekly put my hand up.
I heard the boat wasn't quite
boatman, I want to buy you a whiskey.
Oh, Kat, I feel that you've inherited your sister's journalism skills, because the boat was made out of what, Kat? You asked that question.
No, I said the boat wasn't top of the line.
Yeah. It was made out of what, Paul? Go ahead, fill us in.
It was made out of four lorry inner tubes, a ball of string, and some spare bits of wood.
Yes.
So it wasn't very classy.
Top tips from war photographers. Thank you, Paul. Malika.
I want to share this. This is from Sylvia, who says that what stands out the most to her about Marie is bearing witness. I think that this was really Marie Colvin's vocation. By reading her articles from different war zones, we were witnesses too, and we couldn't say any more that we didn't know. Chris, I want to direct this one to you, because in making this film and watching it, there is no way to say that we didn't know, even if you missed what happened back at the start of the Syrian war. Does this resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things, in making it, it's taken us a while to make the film. I mean, these are big productions, and financially and just logistically, and so we've been working on it over the course of the whole Syrian catastrophe. Really, I think is the only word that I could use. And a lot of people, that we spoke to, Syrian people that we were looking for archive of the time. I mean, there was an incredible, understandable disillusionment had set in, and they really didn't want to actually talk to a lot of Western journalists. They'd had enough because nothing had happened. And then as soon as you'd mention Marie and Paul, the lights would go on, and yeah, we'll help you. What do you want? And suddenly the gates opened, and I talked to them about it, and they said to me very clearly, they are the only people who actually understood what we went through, and they actually lived through it, and tragically for Marie, paid the same kind of price that they paid. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you have to lose your life to be special, but I think it sort of shows something about about what Marie did, you know, and how far she would take it, and Paul together, and how much it meant to people on the ground. I mean, it meant a lot. You know, I know that for a fact from the people we spoke to.
Chris, I want to give people a sense of how you tell the story and how you get Paul and Marie into Syria in your documentary. Have a look at this, everybody.
There's lights. At the bottom of them lights is an army checkpoint. And the soldiers, and this is 50 yards away. Marie disappears. A shadow will wave and you passed on to a shadow. A shadow gives you to another shadow.
Go.
And then just a little flash of a light of a truck. I don't know if it's the Syrian army waiting for us, it's a trap, I don't know. I just ran. I just see Marie. We made it, you know, and she just looked at me, she went, Paul, in Syria.
Indeed. Paul, we got this tweet on that experience. Sultan says, out of the amount of questions that she has, how did you enter Syria? And didn't you have any protection from the government or intel? Talk to us about that. I mean, you say that it was basically pitch black, it was shadowy, and you're just kind of following along in the dark. What was that like?
It was a leap of faith, a lot of it. We met people in Beirut, and it took a long time to establish contacts, and we were literally put into a truck, taken further, taken out, and you know, I think it was a minefield we went through, and then we were just given to other people. We had no protection. The only information we had was that Lebanese intelligence had told us that any journalists found in or around Homs were to be executed and have the bodies thrown on the battlefield. So we kind of knew that going in, which obviously added another layer of trepidation, but it was very much a leap of faith, and just to trust that the people you were getting passed on to were the right people. You know, probably one of the most terrifying things that me and Marie did was that first journey in. It was a real test of anyone's mettle, I think.
There's somebody who took that journey with you and stayed with you while you were in Homs, and his name is Wael. He's a remarkable young Syrian. Can you talk to us about how important he was, because he wouldn't leave you?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, honestly, if there's any, you know, I don't use the word hero a lot. In fact, I very rarely use it, but Wael in my mind was a hero. The moment we met Wael, and he wouldn't accept any payment, he just wanted to do his piece. And he was just so integral to everything. Communications became, you know, fluent. He understood subtlety and nuance, and after he was really badly injured in the attack, and he would not leave. You know, he knew Baba Amra really well. He grew up there as a kid, he played there, he knew the ways in and out, and you know, he just would not leave. You know, such a person of honor. You really don't meet too many people like that.
Paul, can I tell you something about Wael?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Wael, when we were looking for, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, telling you this, but when we contacted him, he lives in Scandinavia now, and we had to arrange for a visa for him to come to England, and he was late for the interview at the embassy, and we said, you know, why were you late? And he said, oh, I just didn't have the money for the taxi on that day. So when he came to England, I got him an envelope, and we had some money in it, and I wrote to Mrs. Wael. And I said, in England, we have a tradition, you know, that if someone comes over from a foreign country to do an interview, we give them, you know, this thing. And he just looked at me and he just went, no. Nice try, but my wife wouldn't take it either. And you know, it's, you know, and it's almost like I don't know whether you think about this. Well, I know you think this, Paul. But when you meet like a man or a woman or whatever, but a person of just absolute honor, and he really is. In this game, you meet in this business, you meet a lot of people, really impressive people who've been through things. But Wael really stands out for me. I mean, that guy is an honourable man, and he's a fine representative of his country, and I salute him. Really, he's the for me, he's the sort of unsung hero of the. Yeah. I hope you don't mind me saying that, Paul, but he's a really, really top person.
Yeah, totally agree. I haven't met him, but he's very supportive of the lawsuit that I brought against Syria, and he was one of the first people that my attorneys at the Center for Justice and Accountability interviewed, and he was supportive isn't even the word. He was sort of proud of me, humble, I guess is what I would think. He didn't take credit, but he was really integral to that lawsuit.
I know that definitely showed in the film, that the person of integrity that he was. But in addition to that, so many questions that we're getting here for you, Paul. I want to bring up just two. This is Siri, who says how you got out of Homs with your leg injury after the trauma of losing both Marie and the photographer Remi. How it felt when you landed back in England. Did you have the same mentality towards journalism after witnessing those deaths? And piggybacking on that, Sumaya here wants to talk about your emotional aftermath after all that you witnessed.
Okay, yeah, I mean, getting out. Anyone who watches the film will see in the film that one of the things that really stuck with me and stick with me the rest of my life is when I was leaving in the tunnel, they said, please get out and tell the world. So landing back in England eventually after escaping, I really have never changed from the fact that I'm almost still on the job. It didn't end when I got to England. In fact, it really actually, part of it began, and that goes for how I've dealt with it all as well. I just haven't allowed myself to fall into self-pity. It's been like, I've come out and I've still got a job to do, and that is to keep telling the world about the Syrian people and the massacre and the slaughters that we witnessed. I owe it to Marie, to Remi, to all of the people who did everything to get me this far. So I never look at it as if I've stopped. I just look at this as a continuation of that final assignment.
Cat, I want to show our audience some headlines, really important headlines. Family of killed US journalist Marie Colvin sues Syria. Marie Colvin's family launches battle for justice. An Assad regime assassinated journalist Marie Colvin, says court claim. This is some court case you've got going on. Do you want to take us back to how it started and then where we are right now, where you are right now?
Well, Paul might not even know this, but it all started with Paul telling me that Marie had been targeted. He could tell by the type of artillery fire that they were bracketing, walking in, and he knew that the Syrian government had targeted Marie. I was so angry. I mean, overwhelming feeling was anger. I was in touch with the Reporters Without Borders, who eventually put me in touch with the lawyers who represent me now, the Center for Justice and Accountability. And we've been able to prove over years of interviews with refugees and defectors, people who risk their lives to smuggle out documents and evidence. But we brought a suit in DC District Court. We have a default judgment. We're waiting for the final order, which should be coming soon. It's the same judge that's hearing the Paul Manafort case, so I think she might be a little distracted. But I really initially brought it, like you said, to bring justice to Marie, or like the headlines read. But as it proceeded, very quickly, it took on meaning to give a voice to the Syrian people, to bring to light the danger, the lives that journalists risking their lives to bring the news to us, and how important that is, how critical it is if there's no one on the ground. Right now there's so much less news coming out of Syria. It's hard to know the depth of the suffering that Marie always gave voice to, the individuals on the ground, who are being bombed. And slaughtered. And so the lawsuit is as much for the Syrian people at this point as it is for my family. I want them to know that we haven't forgotten them. And so we all try to do our bit. It seems minor, really. I know Marie would have done a lot more if our roles had been reversed, but it was what I could do.
You know, Kat, someone on Twitter, this is Thomas, he says, I think the family will have a good case against the Assad regime. There's a lot of evidence confirming the deliberate killing of Marie Colvin and Homs by the regime. The regime, however, will not care much about the case or any final judgment. So there is that, but picking up on that last sentence there is what I want to pivot to, thinking about the Syrian government and the war thus far. Scott here writes in, the killing of Marie Colvin was not just the killing of a journalist. It was an attempted deterrent for any journalist, and remember all of the Syrian journalists who have been killed, detained, and tortured, from bringing us that window on war and the evil of those waging it. Chris, do you want to take that on? Was there a chilling effect after the death of Marie and Remi?
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul is probably better to talk about it, but I would say that, you know, it was successful in the sense that it did deter people from going in. You know, I mean, the targeting of journalists has become something that's, you know, has become, you know, more and more an obvious tactic of governments and warring parties is that, you know, if you can stop the message coming out, then, you know, that's a big, I mean, in this sort of information age particularly, it's a big part of the battle. And so I think, yeah, I think, you know, I think deliberately targeting journalists is part of the war that they waged, and it was successful.
I want to show you.
Their goal in their war strategy was to take out the journalists first.
Sure. Yes, Paul, go ahead.
Yeah.
Let me show you this.
Yeah, kill the messenger.
Yeah.
Kill the messenger is a strategy.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's working completely, because I think, you know, it drives, you know, when people see what happened to Marie, and hopefully when they see the book, you know, they'll realise that they may get away with so much, but, you know, at the end of the day, with what Cat and Scott have done and highlighting this, you know, I just think the case is so important, and speaking out is so important, just to prevent the slow creeping rehabilitation of the Assad regime that we're starting to see the beginnings of now. Hopefully, when the case is settled and it's all done and dusted, people will look at this regime who have blood on their hands, and they will not see people we should do business with. That is critical, that the prism is focused back on this regime, the crimes they've committed against their own people, and not allow them back slowly into normal society.
Yeah, and if I could say, you know, I think people have, you know.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, go ahead, Kat. Go.
The evidence that we've gathered, we submitted so much more than was actually necessary. We had just hundreds and hundreds of documents translated in the hope that someday there can be a criminal trial. You know, I, as an individual, couldn't bring a criminal case, but this evidence is now available to everybody in other countries, and hopefully one day in a criminal trial.
So guests, let me share this with you and with our audience as well. Have a look here on my laptop. This is a very old article from the Telegraph, a UK national newspaper, and they were quoting Marie from a special ceremony that she held, and she was a guest at in 2010, memorialising other journalists and cameramen and staff who were in the field who had died as they were doing their duty, as they were doing their work. And she says here, in the age of 24/7 rolling news, blogs and tweets, we are on constant call wherever we are, but war reporting is still essentially the same. Someone has to go there and see what is happening. And let me just show you here. This is Homs in Syria, and this is where Paul was with Marie, and this was back in 2012. This is Marie Colvin. This is what we can't get so much anymore, that reporting in the field during a conflict. Malika, where do you want to leave us?
With this tweet from Sunny, who says, still missed every day. Thank you, and rest in power, Marie.
Kat and Chris and Paul, thank you so much for joining us. Under the Wire opens this week in the UK, and from September the 7th, have a look here on my laptop. You can download it wherever you happen to be in the world. I highly recommend it. Thank you, guests, for being with us. Take care.